Peace, everybody. My name is Willie Green. I'm a producer engineer from Brooklyn, New York, and this is my studio, The Greenhouse. Here we produce like a pro to give you 5 vocal mixing tips to make sure that your vocals are singing out just right in your mix. Let's dive in. So we've got a record here from my good brothers Shrapnel. This is Curly Castro and Prem Rock. This song is called Mescalito. And I want to start off, my first tip is use compression to control your dynamics, but use volume automation, use vocal rides to add emotion and impact to your record. So let's check this out. We've got the beginning of Curly Castro's verse here on Mescalito. We come in and we want to make sure that we compress Castro in a way where he's sitting right where he needs to be, right as the focus of the record. Let's take a listen real quick.
Witch doctor sacred, let me spill my ritual. Dutch filled with Dr. Fate, but truly you don't hear me though. Only roll a nest of leaf, smoking some Baraka ghost, mischief for Nazi.
So here we've got Castro, he's hanging right where he needs to be. He's the focus, he's the primary thing we're paying attention to in the mix. And we're getting that due to some light but effective compression. We'll open up our channel strip here from console 1, and let's just take a look at how much compression we're putting on Castro's voice here.
Witch doctor sacred, let me spill my ritual. Dutch filled with Dr. Fate, but truly you don't hear me though. Only.
So we're taking off just a little bit. I want to keep the dynamic range in his voice. I want his emphasis to really emphasize when necessary, but I just need all of that to stay right here, right in your face so you catch all of the rhymes. So we're not compressing super heavily. 2.5 to 1 is our ratio, nothing crazy. And also with the parallel, we're blending back in some of that dry signal so we keep the dynamics, but we keep him controlled and focused right in the middle. So we just have him just sitting here just right.
Witch doctor sacred, let me spill my ritual.
So we keep him focused right in the center so we can hear all of his rhymes, we can hear all the words, and our compression gives us nice, consistent vocal performance. But what if he's emphasizing something, that compression is controlling it a little too much? What if we really want him to let loose on certain words? That's when we're gonna use some volume automation to help emphasize the important parts and make sure that everything is dynamic, impactful, and exciting for the listener. So let's turn on our volume automation. And just on a few key words, we're raising the volume and then coming back down. Syllables, even if we need to make sure that the lyrics are clear and exciting and active. We want movement, we want excitement in the records. Let's hear this with the automation.
Witch doctor sacred, let me spill my ritual. Dutch filled with Dr. Fate, but truly you don't hear me though. Only roll a nest of leaf, smoking some Baraka ghost, mischief for Nazi floats, inhale all the indigo. Luggage lost that free.
Right, I wanted the end in this last line, indigo. I want to make sure indigo is very clear and all the way out. So the end of that line, I'm just raising a little bit. This is not so dramatic where you're gonna think, oh, it's so loud, but you feel that line, you feel the excitement and the impact of it.
All the indigo, luggage lost that.
Right, as opposed to indigo, we don't want to throw away the end of bars. You know, sometimes Castro's very good about this, but we want to make sure that every word, every inflection, every syllable is present and clear and wide open for you. That gives you an exciting vocal, a dynamic vocal, and will keep your listeners involved through your entire song. Mix tip number 2, if you've got a vocal in your record, the vocal is the most important thing in your record. The vocal is where the story of your song is. It's where the message is. It's where the emotional guide is. It's also the part that everybody sings along to or raps along to. So it's got to be clear, it's got to be present, and it's got to be right up front. I like my vocal right there. Not too loud, but you can't miss these bars. There's too much good rapping going on. So when we look at, again, this first verse of Mescalito, we've got a big sample here. We got saxophones, we got a lot of jazz stuff going on in the background and things that live in the same frequency range as some of the vocals. So as we start here, we listen with Curly Castro, he's rapping and I want to just clear some of the space out here. I'm using split EQ on my sample just to make a little bit of space in the low mids so the presence of Castro's voice can take that region, and we just push the sample back there just to make enough room.
Hollow point talent going backwards like an anarchist. Always first to the clue. You can
And
hustle man, picking up the pieces of this piece of man, sifting sand, hourglass broke so we can sniff Sudan. Black.
So I'm not changing the tone of the sample. The sample is nice and full, and I want to keep that. I just want to do just enough that it's just pushed back in the right place for Castro to sit right there, almost inside it. A mix is like a puzzle. There's only so much room, and the pieces need to fit together. So if there's a clash somewhere, something's got to give, and the vocal is the most important part of your record, something else has to give so the vocal can be full and clear. In this case, it's the sample. So I'm just clearing out a little bit of space to make sure that the most important part of the record has all the room it needs to breathe. So for a full, more detailed breakdown of this record, a full breakdown of the mix, and also the multi-tracks, if you want to try some of these moves yourself, try some of these tips, head over to Pro Mix Academy. You can get this session, a full, long breakdown of everything that we do in the entire mix to make the record really pop. Head over there and you can get the full deep dive into what we're doing here with Shrapnel and Mescalito. Tip number 3, when I'm mixing rap vocals, generally I don't like to use a lot of reverb on the vocal. Sometimes those reverb trails can kind of build up, and especially if it's a fast flow, we start to kind of cloud our situation rather than just giving some space to the vocal. So for rap vocals, what I like to do is I like to use a bit of a slap delay, which is going to imply some space and generally out to the sides without gumming up the works with a whole big lot of reverb on the vocal. So let's jump into Prem Rock's verse on this song, and we'll just hear a little bit of the space around the vocal with the slap delay. I'll start by, I'm gonna mute the slap. And so this is just dry, this is no slap delay on the vocal.
Hard to chart for the records, however obvious the trails persist, however moderate your fate is held within the frailest wrist.
And that's nice. Prem's got a great voice. He's got a great flow. We're in a good vibe here, but just dry. He's just kind of hanging out somewhere, not necessarily in a space, certainly not in a space as the rest of the track, and just kind of floating above it. But a little bit of time-based effects helps glue the vocal to the instrumental and the rest of what's going on. But when we use that slap delay, it's very subtle and just hints at a bit of space around the vocal. Let's hear this now with that slap engaged.
Hard to chart for the records, however obvious the trails persist, however moderate your fate is held within the frailest wrist. Make of it what you wanna, just saying you don't got a doctorate. Brought up the duality of man, every time you gotta split.
So it's very subtle. You may even need to rewind and throw your headphones on to really hear. We're just slightly introducing some space around Prem. Now he exists in a real life space. Human beings live in acoustic spaces, even if you don't notice it. We're in rooms, we're outdoors, we're places where there's just ambience, because that's what life feels like. So to me, a super dry vocal just doesn't seem natural. Even if we don't want a ton of space, we want to hint at it. We want to imply that it's existing somewhere, and the vocal will feel a lot more natural. Tip 4. Don't be afraid to EQ and affect your effects returns. Just because you've gone into a nice reverb or a nice delay and it sounds lovely, doesn't mean that it's going to fit completely inside your record. Some things might start building up with the vocal that was sent there. Go ahead and notch some stuff out if necessary. Remember, the vocal itself is the most important thing. We want clarity on that. So even the effects returns may need some finesse to allow that vocal to take up all its true space. We'll stay here in Prem Rock's verse, and we're gonna play a little bit.
However obvious the trails persist, however moderate your fate is.
And we've got our slap delay that we discussed back in tip 3, but we're starting to build up a little bit in that mud area that we get into, that 250, 300 hertz over there. So even up to almost 400 hertz is just building a little bit. So I'm just gonna put a little bit of a notch there on the slap so we still get our space that we want, but we're not muddying Prem's voice. That's the opposite of what we're trying to do with the slap delay. So if we're gonna muddy it with the delay, that's hustling backwards. Let's clear that space out a little bit to imply it, but let Prem breathe and have all of his space.
However obvious the trails persist, however moderate your fate is held within the frailest wrist. Make of it what you wanna, just saying you don't got a doctorate. Brought up the duality.
Even just that little notch there, if you can hear it, it feels like Prem took a half a step closer to the microphone. He feels a little bit more present because the cloudiness that was kind of masking him is now gone. And while we have that space, it's a clear space for him now and not a muddy one. And that's what we're looking for. And tip 5, use automation with your effects to really generate special moments in a song. Mixing is really part of the arrangement process. And what we can do is we can enhance the arrangement that's come in with the instrumental, that's come in with the vocals, and make some special moments that propel the song. And also give the listener that little ear candy. If you're listening on something nice, you get a little bonus because you catch all the detail that we put in the record. So when we come to Prem Rock's verse coming out of the chorus, we get to Prem's verse, the beat clears out, the drums go away. So I've added a special eighth note delay there with a little bit of extra finesse on it. So when we get to this point in the second verse, you know, okay, something really cool is going on because the effects are telling me so. So we've got our effect rack from Sound Toys, and we've got our crystallizer delay, which is going to give us our eighth note, but crystallizer will let us pitch shift our delays. So we're dropping that down, we're distorting it because I'm always distorting something, and then we're even adding a little extra delay to the delay. This is not something that we're going to have in the whole song. This is not something that's going to stay on Prem's voice the entire time, but when this is going on in this special exciting moment, we're raising the intrigue, we're raising the tension because something cool and grimy and mysterious is happening in the background.
Gaze upon it all, but never glance within. Roots so dry and fibrous, trying to be fly and vibrant. By and by, should've known that's just the way the tide went. Fight the fear, just never conquer it. Now that I've had a chance to ponder it, best described him as despondent. Hard to chart for the records, however obvious the trip.
And when the drums come back in and the beat's starting to rebuild and reconnect and get pumped back up, the effect goes away and we leave Prem in this stark moment for a second, but the intensity of that stark moment is built from the special moment that we created before. Effects can create that tension and release just like well-placed chords or leading tones in a melody. Effects can do the same thing. So turn them on for a second, splash those vocals, splash that instrumental, and then take it away and then leave your listeners wanting more. Let them stream it again, get those streaming pennies. Let's get it with the special effects. So there's 5 good tips for mixing vocals. If you want an even deeper dive into more tips, into more shrapnel, into more of this song, Mescalito, tune in to Pro Mix Academy. You can get these multi-tracks. You can try some of the stuff yourself and get a full deep dive into every aspect of this song, from the vocals, from Curly Castro to Prem Rock to the beat from Steel Tip Dove. We dive into everything. So tune in, Pro Mix Academy. This is Shrapnel, and I'm Willie Green. Peace.